Nobody asked, but I'm here to answer. June is on its way once again, and there's still an E3-shaped hole in our calendar. The Electronic Entertainment Expo has been cancelled since 2021, with Jeff Keighley's Summer Game Fest in its place. But does Summer Game Fest really match up with E3 at its best? Was E3 even ever really any good? Why are you making this video? Well, I wanted to. So today, let's take a look at E3's rise and the fall, and then also kind of where games announcements stand today. Let's go! Started in 1995, the Electronic Entertainment Expo was first hosted in Los Angeles, California. Before the first show in May of 1995, it's important to look at why E3 even started in the first place. Video games were rising in popularity, and while they did have trade shows where they could show their wares for the upcoming year, the environment didn't quite fit the vibe that they were going for. At the time, game companies would show off their stuff at the Consumer Electronics Expo or at the New York Toy Fair. But if we were to do some word association here, consumer electronics and toy aren't necessarily the first words that come to mind when we're talking about video games. In addition, at these trade shows, game companies weren't really being taken seriously. They would be exhibiting their goods in the parking lot, next to the porta potties, just past the porn section. Not ideal real estate, some might argue. Fed up from the subpar treatment from the CES, the games companies rallied together and created E3! Not quite. A lot had to happen to kick off this show, and GamePro magazine's Pat Farrell led the charge in making the E3 dream a reality. To give some background info on the background info, from 1993 to 1994, violence in video games, namely Mortal Kombat, had prompted US Senate hearings to determine the impacts of these violent games on children. These hearings ultimately led to the creation of the Interactive Digital Software Association and the Entertainment Software Ratings Board, in order to properly rate video games, kind of like TV or movies. With this in mind, the IDSA was looking for a way to fund their operations, and a trade show aimed specifically at the video game market seemed like a great idea, but the board was split on whether to stick with CES or to blaze a new trail. So in the summer of 1994, Pat Farrell, head of GamePro magazine, pitched his E3 idea to the IDSA, but not without competition from the head of CES, Gary Shapiro. Split between whose idea to go with, they decided to go with Farrell since he would give up part ownership of the show, something CES wouldn't do. So with the backing of the IDSA, Farrell could go ahead with his Electronic Entertainment Expo, E3. With a large number of people backing the show, namely Sega and Sony, Farrell was well on his way to creating a successful first outing. However, Nintendo and Microsoft were still holding out, putting all their eggs in the CES basket. To really stick it to them, Farrell decided to look for a location that was available the same days that CES was holding their show, and settled on the Los Angeles Convention Center. This allowed him to force the hand of game companies on whether they would choose the new and exciting E3, which in all likelihood could fail, or to stick with the familiarity of the CES. Well, the majority of companies decided to sign up and side with E3. With a little pressure, eventually Microsoft and Nintendo folded and sided with E3. And with all the convention center space sold out, including numerous hotel ballrooms, the debut of this conference was shaping up to be a big one. The debut of E3 in 1995 was massive, greeted with upward of 40,000 visitors, massive press coverage, and threats to get shut down by the fire marshal. Farrell considered his first outing to be a success. The first E3 was similar to what we'd seen in the past. New game announcements, new console announcement.
$2.99.
As the years went on, E3 went through changes, growing, moving to Atlanta in 97 and 98 because of construction, which nobody liked, presentations getting more and more flashy, vendors wanting things smaller, so everything getting downsized in 2007, and then in 2009 everything's getting re-upsized because vendors actually didn't want that. And throughout this time, the video game industry was becoming larger and more infused with popular culture. E3 was the place where the most important gaming news of the year would be announced. If you were interested in gaming, you would be checking the latest announcements from your favorite publication to see if any new games or news had been announced from the E3 keynotes, since the public wasn't allowed into the conference. Until 2015, E3 was pretty much closed to the public. Sometimes influencers and the like would be allowed in, but for the most part, E3 was just for people in the industry. However, in 2015, 5,000 people from the general public were allowed into the show. And in 2017, 15,000 tickets were open to the public, which boosted attendance to around 68,000 people. During this time, though, opening E3 to the public might have just been a way to plug some holes forming in the E3 boat. Starting in 2011, Nintendo began releasing Nintendo Directs to directly address their audience with any new games or things to look out for. This ended up replacing their big press conferences at E3 in 2013, but they still kept a booth on the show floor for now. EA pulled out of E3 in 2016 and decided to start their own conference called EA Play. And in a final blow, Sony, one of the original champions of E3, pulled out of the conference in 2019. These vendors leaving and opting to release their own, largely virtual press conferences makes sense. I mean, just renting out the booth often costs thousands of dollars, and that's not including internet, electricity, and the cost of sending out employees and building out the full booth and experience. So at the end of the day, some booths ended up costing $1 million. Compare that price to the cost of just sticking someone in front of a camera and filming it, and things start to make sense. In addition to the price point, the world was becoming more and more connected and engaged with the internet. The ability to reach millions of people now is much easier than it was in 1995. Big companies can easily post a video to their YouTube channel and garner tens of thousands of views, something that wasn't really imaginable in 1995, 10 years before the advent of YouTube. So with these issues in mind, E3 was planning a pivot for their 2020 show, which was canceled for reasons we all know. They had originally drawn up plans to provide around 25,000 tickets to the public, focusing more on influencers and fans. They pitched the idea of Q-tainment, a way to combat the frustration and the boredom of waiting in long lines, and a way to schedule game demos so you can skip the line entirely. As a last grasp at staying relevant and other reasons, E3 held an online-only conference in 2021 before scrapping everything and going under. They say a phoenix is reborn from the ashes of itself, and thus comes Summer Games Fest, rising from the ashes of E3. Jeff Keighley had been a part of E3 for a while, most notably hosting E3 Coliseum from 2017 to 2019, where he would chat and interview developers and publishers. But with the proposed direction change of E3 2020, Jeff decided to leave and start Summer Games Fest instead. During its first 2 years, largely because of the pandemic, Summer Games Fest was all virtual. 2020's show lasted from May 1st to August 24th. During these months, every so often, a video press release from a games company or a product showcase hosted by Keighley would be released on the Game Awards YouTube channel. This allowed anybody to tune in and see the latest in games that summer. Since its inception, Summer Games Fest has been growing in size, streamlining its experience, bringing in a live audience, but keeping to its mostly online-facing format. Last year's Game Fest ran from June 7th to 10th, condensed from its original 3-month run. They hosted a live show kickoff from the YouTube Theater, Day of the Devs, game trailer premieres, as well as developer-specific announcements. Like all shows of this genre, it's not without its faults and awkward moments, but I think the heart is there. So is this the future for Summer Games announcements? For now, yes. In addition to Nintendo Direct and Sony State of Play, an online direct-to-consumer model seems to be what fits best for the games industry. Much like when CES was unwilling to adapt to the changing culture around video games, leading to the creation of E3, E3 was unable to adapt to the changing culture around video games, leading to the creation of the Summer Games Fest. I'm not sure that we'll ever see the hanging, flailing bodies or the tent churches of previous E3s at Summer Games Fest. But corporate spectacle knows no bounds, so we'll just have to see what Keighley's willing to let fly at his Summer Games Fest. Is it Summer Game Fest or is it Summer Games Fest? I wrote it 2 different ways in my script and I honest to God could not tell you which one's right. Thanks for watching. If you like the video, like it or whatever. If you don't like it, that's okay. Don't just leave. Go away. It's fine. You don't have to just like it. If you want to subscribe, you can subscribe. If you want to comment down below your favorite E3 moments or maybe your favorite Summer Game Fest moments, go for it. Join me next time for restorative meditation and yoga. Bye!